एष देवो विश्वकर्मा महात्मा सदा जनानां हृदये सन्निविष्टः स्वराज्य साम्राज्य विभूतिरेषा भवत्कृपा श्रीमहिमप्रसादात् प्राप्ता मया श्रीगुरवे महात्मने नमो नमस्तेस्तु पुनर्नमोस्तु नमो नमस्तेस्तु पुनर्नमोस्तु नमो नमस्तेस्तु पुनर्नमोस्तु नमस्तस्मै सदैकस्मै कस्मै चिन्महसे नमः यदेतद्विश्वरूपेण राजते गुरुराजते यदेतद्विश्वरूपेण राजते गुरुराजते हरि I am also happy seeing you all after 1 year. Last November I had come. So 1 year has passed. We wanted to have a very sublime session which will be beneficial for all of us, for the individuals as well as for the society. Given the present strife in the society, always, not only now, in any era it will be very much beneficial to the society. So, according to some suggestions, we had taken the Shanti mantras, which we did in Guru Purnima, during Guru Purnima. Many of you who have attended, they have listened to it. But we thought in a bigger audience like this, we will take up Shanti mantra. And if you can learn it properly and chant it in your own home also after learning, it will be a great benefit not only to you and your family, but to the society also. See, these Shanti mantras, this is called Shanti Patha also. There are 10 particular Shanti Pathas which are recited before any Upanishadic session. Because any Upanishadic class or communication needs a great orderliness and Shanti around. We generally say the Vedas are apaurushaya. This word many of you might have heard. Vedas, about the Vedas it is called apaurushaya. But this apaurushaya often is grossly misunderstood. People think that it has fallen from the sky, from nowhere. It is given by the God. It's not like that. They are in our language, Sanskrit language. It is a human language. But there is a great meaning why it is called apaurushaya. Normally, Purusha means, Purusha has got two meanings. In Sanskrit, all the words are, the meaning is understood from its root. So, Purusha has got two kinds of vyutpatti or etymology. One is called Puri Shete iti Purushaha. Puri Shete iti Purushaha. That means one who is inside the Puri means the body. That is, we have a feeling that I, that consciousness, that I, that identity that I am, that is inside our body. So that is our general understanding. We always feel that I means this body enclosing that Atma, or so Atma is inside the body. So it is called Purusha. That means each Purusha is different for different bodies that way. We consider that I am different from you, different from others, like that. There is another Vyutpatti or etymology for Purusha, which is Purnam Anena Sarvam Iti. Purnam Anena Sarvam Iti. That means by which everything is full. That means you cannot miss it anywhere. Everywhere it is. Even saying everywhere it is not fully all right. Actually, the everywhere, the whole universe is appearing in that consciousness, in that Atma. That is why it cannot be missed anywhere. The universe is in the Atma, not the Atma is in the universe. So, that Purusha is our real identity, which is independent of the body, which is transcending our body identity, body, mind, personality identity. That is our real identity. So, when we say Apaurusheya means these are not composed by anybody, written by anybody, but they are revealed to some rishis. You will find that the mantras, corresponding rishi is there. Say Gayatri, which we are doing after Upanayanam. That Gayatri, the rishi is called Vishwamitra. Like that, each mantra has got a rishi. Rishi, the word means seer. That means the sage or the saint who visualized the mantra. But visualized not with the eyes, but the mantra was revealed to his mind, to his consciousness. So, when the mind of the saint or the rishi or the knower, it transcends the boundary of our body-mind limited personality, that he no longer feels that I am different from others, I am this small identity. He starts feeling that I am not touched by anything in the whole universe at all. The whole universe is appearing in me. I am not touched by any change, any affectation anywhere at all. Then the truth reveals to that universal mind. So that revelation is what is written in the Vedas. Earlier it was not written, it was going from mouth to mouth. Later on it was written down. Whatever it is not a composed thing like the, say, Ramayana, we say it is composed by Valmiki. Mahabharata, we say it is composed by Vedavyasa. But about Vedas we don't say. We say it is Apaurusha. That means one person has not composed it. It is the truth which is there in nature, there in the universe, which has been revealed to us, revealed to the seers. In the Vedas, in this communication of the truth, there are two clear-cut divisions. The first portion of the Vedas, it is called Karma Kanda. Karma Kanda means it is all ritualistic. And they are all desire oriented. Karma actually means causality. If you do something, there is a cause and that cause will produce an effect. Karma always precedes a sort of a desire that we want something, that is why we do it. We will go into it in detail later on. In this Karma Kanda, various rituals, yaga, yajna, everything is discussed. That is, suppose you don't have children, you want son. So it is called Putra Kameshti Yajna, which Dasharatha did and had his 4 children. Similarly, Ashwamedha Yajna. Like that, there are various yajnas which has a certain result. So desiring that result, you do the yajna. As in Kathopanishad, Nachiketa's father, Vajasravas, was doing a yajna so that after death he can attain the best of the heaven. He can go to the heaven. Whether heaven is there or not, that is another point. But this yajna is mentioned that this is the effect of the yajna. So anybody who performs, he performs with the desire for attaining the goal of it. Whereas in the Jnana Kanda, or the second half of the Vedas, it is called Jnana Kanda, it is called Vedanta. That means the end of the Vedas. It is the conglomeration of all the Upanishads. There, The first criterion is you have to be free of desires. Because in desire there is lot of delusion involved. Actually you feel that without desire there cannot be any motivation. We cannot work. But it is absolutely a wrong understanding of the world. Without desire we can work much better. When desire is not the motivation, we can work much better and we will be happier. We will always be happy. We don't have to get the result and be happy. So naturally there is a great delusion and misunderstanding in the karma kanda level. But still it is necessary for people, for the desirous people, to do it, and so that their mind is processed through a certain discipline and they attain a certain orderly state of mind, intelligence and the body where they can pursue the knowledge. That was the idea. In the knowledge part, that is Jnana Kanda or the Upanishads or the Vedanta, the first criterion is you have to be free of desires. That is, you have to work for, you have to put all your effort to be freed of all the worldly desires. Initially there will be the desire for attaining the goal, that is the self-realization also, or attaining Brahman. Later on he will understand that that desire also is a hindrance. So he has to drop that desire also. Not initially. Initially the desire for truth, the desire for realization of the truth will keep away all other desires. With that desire he will win over all other desires. Like with one thorn you remove all other thorns using that. Like that with that desire you remove all other worldly desires. When everything is removed, then you will find that that desire for self-realization or the ultimate truth itself is becoming a hindrance. Then that also has to be removed. So this Jnana Kanda is comprising of the Upanishads. That is, all the Upanishads, they are dealing with the ultimate truth and how to realize that truth in life. All these Upanishads, they start with a Shanti Patha. Shanti Patha or Shanti Mantra. Not that all Upanishads, the Shanti Mantras are different. Generally these 10 Shanti Mantras are found in different Upanishads. So these 10 Shanti Mantras are chanted. In many ashrams it is chanted every morning. Because these Upanishads, they are dealing with a transcendental knowledge. I said that Apaurishaya means to understand, the grasp the meaning of the words in Upanishad. Our mind also will have to become transcendental, otherwise how will we grasp? So to go to that transcendental level, unless the mind, everywhere the situation, the circumstances are very orderly, peaceful, and the mind is also free of its various kinds of agitations, we will not be able to attain it. So these Shanti Pathas almost are a must before the Upanishadic discussion, so that the communication of this knowledge takes place with maximum efficiency and people are able to grasp the transcendental knowledge properly. They don't misunderstand it. So these Shanti Pathas are to bring in Shanti, all kinds of Shanti. That is what we will learn word by word now, how it is brought. Now there I would say that generally people chant these Shanti Mantras in Vedic tune. There is a particular way of chanting, not tune but way of rhythm and chanting, it is there. Because Vedas were transferred from mouth to mouth through hearing. That is why it is called Shruti. Shruti means hearing. It was, all the Vedas are called Shruti. Shruti means by hearing it was being transferred from generation to generation. Now, unless they are chanted with a certain rhythm in a certain manner, various disciplines are there for chanting, it will be lost and people will make mistakes, something will drop off. So they have given a very good binding, very good order to the whole thing in the chanting also. But what happens is that in that chanting of that kind, the word meanings do not become apparent. That is, that chanting is not bhavanuyayi. It has got its own gravity, profundity, everything is there. But it is not according to the expression of the word, that word, whatever meaning it is carrying, it is not according to that. When I say that, I can give a small example. It is not what they chant, but I am just saying so that you can understand. That suppose you are saying Mahakatta, Mahajnani, Mahakatta, Mahajnani, or Mahabhokta, or Maha anything. If you say that Mahakatta, will it have its meaning? Maha means great. The great in English also you have to say great. Will you say great? Great Noor. You will say great Noor. He is a great noble person. He is a noble person. This expression comes from the emotional association of the meaning of the word. So that is very important when we want to carry the bhava or the power through the sound. This bhavanuyayi or bhava association or the emotional association is very important. See, mantra, this word has come from mananat trayate iti mantraha. Mananat trayate iti mantraha. That which liberates us or relieves us by mentation. Mananat means by thinking, rumination. So we can call it mentation, by rumination. That which relieves us or liberates us through rumination. You can understand why people are not becoming successful in japa. Majority of people, they are doing some mantra japa for decades, but they never question, have I progressed or have I not progressed? They don't inquire about it. Now in most of the cases you will find that the japa is done mechanically. Guru has told me to do 1008 times and I am doing 1008 times. Or I am counting with the mala and so many times like that. So that will have some little effect, that at least that much of time you will not be thinking of your mother-in-law, daughter-in-law, or your boss or subordinate or anything of the world which is disturbing your mind always, or your daughters or sons who are disobedient. So whatever is happening which is disturbing you in the family or office or so in the world, that mind should at least be away from that. But that also do not happen. People go on doing japa and say, have you seen that? Have you done that work? Oh, today my friend will come. So that is worst possible japa, because you are not even allowing the mind to get focused on the japa. But even if it gets focused on the japa, the real benefit will not be had unless there is an emotional association with the mantra. That is why mantra means mananatrayate. Mantra is not just a word, it means something. Suppose the mantra is Namah Shivaya. Namah Shivaya. This Namaha means I am prostrating before. What does prostration mean? Is it not gratitude? Is it not humility? That something, where will we prostrate? Thinking of something great or God about great or the universe as great, we will prostrate. So unless, when we say Namaha, unless humility dawns in our mind, unless we become, we feel the gratefulness for the Lord or for anybody whom we are prostrating, that Namaha will not have the real bhava. Where am I doing the prostration? Shivaya, Namah Shivaya, Shiva. What is this Shiva? If you have a Shiva as a Lord, as we generally worship also, sitting in the Himalayas or Kailasha, well, that Shiva also you have to think that he is the Lord of the universe. So it is something great to whom we are prostrating. If it is not so, the higher level of meaning of Shiva means auspiciousness. The ultimate level of auspiciousness, which means the Atma. Shiva means actually our Atma. When Shiva is not felt, we become Shava. That consciousness in us goes, then we call the body Shava. It is no more, that Shiva part is missing there. It is not missing in real sense, but effectively it is missing. So, Shiva means the ultimate auspicious goal, ultimate truth. So when we are saying Namah Shivaya, if our mind completely blends, completely gets dissolved in that universal truth, which is the auspicious goal of all human beings. If in our mind we can bring in that bhava, then only the Namah Shivaya japa will have an effect. We say that Devo Bhutva Devanapyati. When you are doing Vishnu Puja or Shiva Puja, you have to become Shiva or Vishnu to do the puja properly. The purpose of the puja will be done only when you become that Deva, when you are worshipping the Deva. Unless you become Deva, the full effect of the worship will not be there. By all this, what I am trying to say is that everywhere this japa, mantra japa, it is addressed to ourselves. It must bring in some transformation in our mind. It is not that we are praying to God and God will do something. Everywhere, if it is done properly, it should bring in some transformation in our mind. So, this Shanti mantras also, when we uttered each word of the mantra with the profound meaning carried by those words, then it will bring in the Shanti. You will find that Shanno Mitra Sham Varunaha, Sham they are doing. You will find why they are using Sham so many times. Because Sham means when the mind is placid, when the mind is free of agitation, the mind is free of ragadvesha. That is the state of the mind. So we are praying for that Shanti from everywhere, that placidity of the mind from everywhere. Now, we will again go into the discussion, detailed discussion. Before that, I just wanted you to chant following me. You have the literature. Try to chant all in the same scale as I am chanting, in the same meter or the same speed as I am chanting, so that we have a beautiful chorus which will have great effect on the atmosphere. I will come back to the interpretations again later on, but let us have some chanting done today. We will chant all the 10 mantras. Say. Om Shanno Mitra Sham Varunaha Shanno Bhavatvaryama Shanna Indro Brihaspatihi Shanno Vishnurukramaha Namo Brahmane Namaste Vayo Tvameva Pratyaksham Brahmasi Tvameva Pratyaksham Brahma Vadishyami Rutam Vadishyami Satyam Vadishyami Tanmamavatu Tadvaktaramavatu Avatu Mamavatu Vaktaram Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ यश्छन्दसा वृषभो विश्वरूपः छन्दोभ्योऽध्यमृतात् सम्बभूव समेन्द्रो मेधया स्पृणोतु अमृतस्य देवधारणो भूयासम्। शरीरं मे विचर्षणम् जिह्वा मे मधुमत्तमा कर्णाभ्यां भूरिविश्रुवम् ब्रह्मणः कोशोऽसि मेधया पिहितः श्रुतं मे गोपाय ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ अहं वृक्षस्य रेरिव कीर्तिः पृष्ठं गिरेरिव ऊर्ध्वपवित्रो वाजिनीव स्वमृतमस्मि द्रविणं सवर्चसम् सुमेधामृतोक्षितः इति त्रिशङ्कोर्वेदानुवचनम्। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ आप्यायन्तु ममाङ्गानि वाक्प्राणश्चक्षुः श्रोत्रमथो बलमिन्द्रियाणि च सर्वाणि सर्वं ब्रह्मोपनिषदम् माहं ब्रह्म निराकुर्याम् मा ब्रह्म निराकरोद निराकरणमस्तु अनिराकरणं मेस्तु तदात्मनि निरतेय उपनिषत्सु धर्मास्ते मयि सन्तु ते मयि सन्तु। ओम शांति शांति शांति। ओम वाङ्मे मनसि प्रतिष्ठिता ओम वाङ्मे मनसि प्रतिष्ठिता मनो मे वाचि प्रतिष्ठितम् आविराविर्मयेधि वेदस्य माणिस्थः श्रुतं मे मा प्रहासीः अनेनाधीतेन अहोरात्रान् संदधामि वृतं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि तन्मामवतु तद्वक्तारमवतु अवतु मामवतु वक्तारम् अवतु वक्तारम्। ओम शांति शांति शांति। ओम भद्रं नो पिवातय मनः ओम शांति शांति शांति। ओम भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येमाक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैस्तुष्टुवांसस्तनूभिः व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः स्वस्ति न इंद्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्तार्क्ष्यो वरिष्ठनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ यो ब्रह्माणं विदधाति पूर्वम् यो वै वेदांश्च प्रहिणोति तस्मै तं हदेवमात्मबुद्धिप्रकाशम् मुमुक्षुर्वै शरणमहं प्रपद्ये ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः Did you like to chant? Actually, it will be much better when you, at the end of the 5 days when we chant, by the time you will master the words and the meaning also, the group chanting, chorus chanting also should be much better by then. Now you have not known many of you cannot follow the words, there are very big words also. Now this session normally has to be conducted in early morning or morning at least. Any Upanishadic session has to be conducted in the morning. But we have been compromising over the last few years. Previously we used to take only in the morning, but last few years I started it from USA because they cannot come in the morning, they can only come in the evening, and they want it very much. And finally they put forward the argument that now it is morning in India, so you can go ahead with it. So I accepted their argument, and thereafter we have been doing in the evening also. It should not be, traditionally it should not be, but with the modern era we are compromising on various ways. This is also a compromise. Second pardon is that I am not chanting in the Vedic tune. We have devised our own Bhavanujai tune, and the confidence we get is that it is not fully our original. I stayed in Kailash Ashram for some time, about a month. At that time they more or less follow this tune. I have changed a little, putting more bhava into it. Otherwise, more or less, they also do not follow the Vedic tune. Every morning they chant these 10 verses. And they are the most traditional people in our country. Kailash Ashram is the Peethasthan of this Upanishadic studies. So, seeing that, I could easily take to it that there is no harm. Even Vedic tune also, it is not all over India, it is not uniform. It varies widely from region to region. So as long as we are focusing on the ultimate goal of attaining the truth, and everything we are doing around that, whatever facilitates the absorption of the truth, communication of the truth, we are doing nothing wrong. That is our confidence, that we are only trying to communicate the truth in the best possible manner. So there we can take the liberty to violate the tradition also. We create the tradition by that. We have that confidence. Now, prayers can generally be of two kinds. That is, one where you are asking for some worldly benefit. That is, you go to the temple and you pray for money, you pray for property, you pray for good health, you pray for children, you pray for various things. Now there directly you don't have to do anything. You have some faith in the God or the deity you are praying, and that God will give you. That is our faith. Now there also we find the benefit, the result widely differs. Some people, their prayer gets fulfilled. Others, it doesn't get fulfilled. In a temple, thousands of people are going. Maybe the prayer gets fulfilled for a few. Why is it? There also again it is our emotional, the whole being, the association of our whole being, how much we are identified with our prayer, and whether the prayer is harmonious with nature. Suppose we pray something which is harmful for others. By its very nature, it will not generate the power. But when we pray for the welfare of everybody, it will automatically generate the power. Because when we are praying for some harm for others, our mind is becoming very small. It is very constricted mind, kripana mind, miserly mind. Such a mind will not have the power. So generally, even for desireful prayer where we are asking for some material benefit or material reward, there also the prayer will produce different result depending on our association and depending on the power of our mindset. The broader the mind, the more expanded the mind, it will have greater power. Suppose a mother, her son has met an accident. Now, where is a mother who will not pray for the welfare of the son? Naturally, the mind will generate that there may my son become all right. But suppose a mother who is very worried and agitated about the condition of the son and praying fervently, wailing, crying and praying at the same time, may my son become all right. This is one. In another case, the mother is concerned about the son. She is not definitely happy, but she is not agitated, she is not wailing. She might be shedding a little tears, but she is not wailing, she is not howling. And her prayer is for all. In her prayer, it is not only my son, but may all mothers' son be protected. That kind of a prayer. That kind of the mother's mindset will definitely generate much more of benefit for the son. Do you get my point? The mother who is praying with an agitated mind, aggrieved mind, will not really produce, the nature will not, she will not be able to master so much of power from the nature for the benefit of the son, as a poised mother, a benevolent mother, a wide-hearted, noble-hearted mother will be generating from nature. So this is about the prayers where we are wanting something to happen by praying to some natural power or to God or to wherever we have faith. Now there are another kind of prayer which we call self-addressed prayer. These prayers are, most of them are self-addressed. Almost all of them are self-addressed prayer. There is a part in it which is also asking for something but not worldly benefit at all. So these Shanti mantras are self-addressed prayer. What do we mean by self-addressed? It is all to us that may I become pure, may I become noble, may my mind become very powerful so that we can continue with this study, may I imbibe the learning, the Upanishadic learning fully so that I can work with full heartedness, etc. So all is addressed to ourselves and our improvement, our growth, our development, everything. So they are self-addressed prayer. Although we are saying that praying to different devas or to Om or to Brahman, various things are there in these prayers addressed to various powers. But what we are praying is a improvement in a transformation of our being, transformation of our personality. So they are all self-addressed prayer. Now naturally, it depends exclusively on our emotional and complete wholesome association with whatever we are praying. Suppose I am praying for purity. Now, make me pure, I am saying, and at the same time I am thinking ill of others or blaming somebody. Oh, she told me like that day, tomorrow I will get the right answer, I will give. I could not speak that day because the word did not come. Tomorrow I will teach her a lesson. So all these things are going on and I am praying for purity. So I want to become pure, I want to become pure. बोलने से कुछ नहीं होगा. By saying that, we will not become pure. Only when we are really, genuinely yearning for purity, then only the prayer will have greatest effect. So this is what we mean by emotional association with the mantra, emotional association with the prayer. And there lies the success of our effort also. If we do it with a wholesome association, then it will have its full benefit. So Shanti mantras are all like that. Now let us come to the first Shanti mantra. See, this devas we call. Here in the first mantra, Shan Naha Mitraha, Sham Varunaha, Shan Naha Bhavatu Aryama. This Mitraha, Varunaha, Aryama, Indraha, Brihaspatihi, Vishnuhu, Urukramaha. All these are devas. Now, deva, the word has come from dip dhatu. Dip dhatu means brilliance. Dip dhatu means brilliance. In the Vedic era, whatever happening in the nature, if we could identify the cause, then we will not think of devas. Suppose I am pushing the table and the table is moving. We want to move the table, I am pushing. We know from birth that the causality is functional in the whole world. Causality means, if I want to lift my hand, I have to put the effort to lift my hand. Only then it will move. So everything in the world is bound by causality. There will be a cause and there will be an effect. That is what we learn. But there are certain things where we could not detect the causality. Suppose suddenly flood comes. Those days, suddenly flood comes. Even now also, we don't know the reason. Now we know that it has rained, but all the full causality we don't know. Suddenly there is an earthquake, lightning, severe lightning. All those things we don't know where from it is, but they are source of tremendous power. Day, night, changing into the sun is coming. Where from it is coming, we don't know. We know the sun giving us brilliance, and we are living because of that brilliance. Where from the sun has come, we don't know. So all those fundamental powerful natural entities like sun, moon, day, night, the lightning, everything, those are considered to be devas. They were the Vedic deities. Even fire, they were the Vedic deities. That means which has got its own natural power. But at the same time, the ultimate deva, which is the substratum of all these devas, is our own Atma, the ultimate brilliance. Why? Even if the sun is there, if it is not revealed by our Atma, by our consciousness, will we know that there is sun? So all other things, whether it is sun, moon, flood, anything, existence, that existence has to be, the whole world has to be revealed by our mind, by our consciousness. Until and unless it shines in our mind, in our consciousness, we will not know that it is there. Their existence is depending on my consciousness, I. That is how this I becomes universal and the highest. So the real deva or the real brilliance is within us. But because we don't know, we think I am a puny human being in the millions and trillions of human beings on earth. So many human beings have come and gone, and this whole universe, what is the position of me? I am a speck, not recognizable at all. So we don't have faith that the greatest power in the universe is right within me. Not only it is within me, it is wrong to say within me. That is what my identity is. That I is the consciousness is the only thing. It is the substratum of the whole universe. It is not easy to have faith in it. So even a person who is reading Vedanta, studying Vedanta, and have perhaps studied all the Upanishads, when something happens while praying, he will think of God sitting somewhere in the yonder sky. You find out it is like that. A person who is adept in Vedanta also, studied a lot and read quite a lot, even then, when something happens, he doesn't have faith in his Atma, which is the Brahman itself. He may say, I am Brahman, Aham Brahmasmi. But he does not believe because it has not got actualized in him. He has not realized the truth. So when something happens, he will, in his prayer, he will think that I am praying to some external God. This external God feeling doesn't go. So in our prayers, we accept that it is our Atma which has become all the external God. But while praying, we do it in a manner that we more and more get associated and start becoming that real I. Our prayer will be such that we will get fused in that real I. Our small identity, that body, mind, limited personality, the constricted identity will, through our prayer, through our self-addressed prayer, will get fused in the universal identity. This is the purpose. Are you able to understand the meaning? So, here you see that Sham. Sham means Naha. Naha means to us. That we are praying that may Mitraha being propitious to us. Now this propitious is not a material propitiousness, because they are Upanishadic Shanti Pathas. We are not asking for anything material there. There the propitiousness means, Sham means a peaceful mind, a fulfilled mind, a contented mind, a brilliant mind, all these things. That means whatever mind will be capable of grasping and realizing the truth, that kind of a mind. This Sham is a great word there. Shama, Dama, Titiksha, Uparati, that Shama is coming there. Shama means a peaceful, desireless mind actually. Why desireless we are saying? Because we are always suffering from insufficiency. In Sanskrit it is called Abhava Bodha. Insufficiency. You understand? Why are we looking for happiness? We are doing anything we do, we think that I will become happy by doing that. Is it not so? So we are not basically happy. There is a gap, there is an insufficiency, there is an abhava bodha. Abhava bodha. Abhava means lack of something. That feeling is right there within us. Because of that, we are trying something to either riches or prosperity or good habitat or some partner or some good words from somebody or some knowledge from somewhere to fulfill our katora, fulfill our where there is a lack, there is a gap. So we are always running after things to thinking that that will make us happy. Here a little intelligence is necessary. If you look around the world, see even past, present, everywhere, trillions of people have lived. Has anybody become happy by gaining anything from the world? The richest persons in the world, were they happy? The most famous people in the world were happy. When we say happy means fulfilled. They will not look for further anything. They will not look for anything more. That fulfillment is elusive. With all the material property, they have only perhaps increased their agitation and maybe so many other things which will make him disturbed. So when we see and look around and find that by gaining anything from the world, people have not a single person has become happy, should we not question our movement, that motivation, that I think that by making this, doing this, I will become happy. It is like tying the carrot in front of the ass. You know that with a lever, you hang the carrot in front of the ass. The ass runs after the carrot, but the carrot moves with it. Just like that, the carrot of happiness is hanging in front of us. By making this building, when I enter, I will become happy. When I actually entered the building, oh, my wife says the window should have been there, this facility is not there. Previously, I was staying in a rented house. I used to tell the owner and he had to repair. Now anything going bad and everything is going bad, I have to go run after masons and run after plumbers to get it right. So every time we thought that we will become happy. But when we have entered, maybe happiness came, a little fulfillment when people came and Griha Pravesha is going on, we are happy. Thereafter it is gone. Because happiness does not lie outside. We forget that the happiness is right within us. So this Abhava Bodha, we are never becoming fulfilled. So the we say that our Mother Nature also allows us to, that a child, he goes on playing with this toy, then after some time he gets bored, takes up another, gets bored, takes up something else. Finally, when he becomes absolutely tired with all the items, then what does he do? Cries for the mother's lap. Is it not so? It will cry for when the mother puts him or puts her into the lap, then the crying stops. Like that, our mother, we call our Shastras as Shruti Mata. That is the truth also. We are playing with the world, thinking that I will become happy. The mother is calling us back, come back, come back. Happiness is not there. It is being in our lap, in my lap, come back. But we don't heed her voice at all. We go on running till we become absolutely tired. Then we say that, no, I don't know. Let me get back from where I have come. It's like the river. The river, where is the origin source of the river? Ocean. The evaporation from the ocean is creating the river. And that cloud, the evaporated, the vapor becoming cloud, it is finally coming down as rain on the mountains. Then finally the river starts moving. Where it is running to, finally? Until it meets the ocean, it has the river, small identity of river. I am Ganga, I am Yamuna, I am this. Actually, there is no Ganga, no Yamuna. Is the water stagnant there? Ganga, we are saying the apparent form of the river where the water is being carried. Is it not? That form remains. But the water, when it meets the ocean, it is no more Ganges water. It is the ocean water. It has got merged. And then the running also stops. It has got become the same saline water of the ocean. Like that, our happiness lies right in our soul, in our real identity. Until we stop running after something, that happiness never comes. We don't analyze our actions. Suppose for the first time you have seen the sea or ocean. We feel, oh, so vast, so great. We become so happy. Well, if you stay there for 1 month and more, will you be happy seeing the ocean? Or right in front of the ocean, we will start fighting with each other. That is gone. Or suppose you are seeing the ocean, right? That then the news comes that you have lost somebody or you have lost your job. What happens? The ocean is still there. Are you happy seeing the ocean? What has happened? So actually the happiness is right within. What happened first when you saw the sky or the ocean? You forgot all other small desires, other things which is always bothering you. Either raga or dvesha. Either something fearful which is abhorring, you are abhorring, or something you are attracted to. When all that is gone, by seeing the ocean, when all that is gone, the mind becomes placid. The mind becomes like the ocean, vast, and that gives us the joy. If we sit in the room and make the mind like that, free of all constrictions, here itself we will have the joy, much more joy we will have. So even those who meditate and get a bliss in the meditation, they also are not applying their intelligence. They should think that, I have got bliss. Again they will run for the bliss. But actually, how did the bliss come? It did not. It came when my mind was not associated with anything in the universe. Not that the body, but the mind. When the mind was free of all material association with any object in the world, then I got the greatest joy. Then where lies the joy? It is right within, in the mind. So because we don't have that faith that everything is within, and we don't analyze our behavior, our interactions to understand that it is so. So we go on having faith in, we have to create always an external something where we have to pray. But let us understand that this prayer will become successful only when we have the full emotional association with it. Suppose you are thinking of Lord God, but while praying, may I become pure, really, genuinely yearn for purity. There is no harm that you are thinking of an external God. Let it be. But if your prayer is genuine, I want to become pure, I want to become pure, and the yearning is genuine, then naturally purity will dawn. How? Not that the God has given you the purity. That thought, that yearning for purity will transform your mind and make it pure. The mind will become pure by the force of the mind, by the power of the mind. The mind will purify your mind. So that is what is happening in the Shanti mantras, we have to remember. Mitra is believed to be the god of the day, which brings us light, brings us activity, life, everything. Brings us light, activity. What happens when the day breaks? We open up towards light. Not only we, you look at the plants, look at everywhere, the leaves, they are taught, they are moving towards light, moving towards activity. This is a time when we rise to the activity. So we are praying to the God of the day that may our days become propitious. That means may our day bring to us fulfillment, contentment, sham, peace, brilliance, etc. Similarly, Varunaha means it is the god of the night. So we are not leaving only the day become auspicious. We are praying that the night also should become auspicious for us. When we are withdrawing from the world, withdrawing from activity, we are withdrawing into ourselves, then also may our thoughts, may our dreams, may our sleep, everything becomes auspicious for us. May it become propitious. May it bring peace to us. So in life we are having this day and night, and we are trying to make our day and night auspicious. Then we are not leaving the beyond life also, other world. That is, as day and night they are alternating, similarly after life, our body is not permanent here. So what about when the body falls? What about the other worlds? So the other worlds, the Lord is called Aryama. Aryama. Even Bhagavad Gita you will find Pitrinam Aryama Chasmi in 10th chapter. I have written here, I think. It's given here. Pitrinam Aryama Chasmi. That is, of the Pitris, of the departed souls, I am the Aryama. That is, I am the presiding deity of the departed souls, means the other world. That also we are praying for auspiciousness. That is, we are not leaving any part of our existence to be haunted by inauspicious thoughts or anything. When we pray that our dreams also should become auspicious, dreams will become auspicious by that. Whatever we pray, according to that, it will happen. So we will take it up again tomorrow. Let us stop. The only one thing that they are powers of nature, but when the consciousness, the consciousness is the ultimate truth. When the consciousness identifies itself with some power, then only we call it a Deva. Actually, they are part of nature. All these things, they are part of nature. As nature, they are not having consciousness. They are inert forces. That is, day, night, sun, moon, they are all inert powers, energy and objects. But when we think of them that they are also an expression of the ultimate truth, the consciousness, the ultimate Ishvara or the Atma, whatever you may say, Brahman, that means the consciousness associates itself with that power, then we call it a Deva. Otherwise they are all powers of nature. Similarly, when the whole universe, the consciousness identifies with the whole universe, we call him Brahma or Hiranyagarbha or Ishvara. That is the whole nature as a being which is having a consciousness. So these are all our way of sankalpa, our identifying things like this. Actually everything is consciousness alone. There is nothing else. The whole world appears in the consciousness. Because we identify separate powers in nature, we have to be aware that they are not separate identities. They are all expression in the consciousness. They are consciousness alone. When we associate the consciousness, they are considered as devas. I will take this shloka again tomorrow. We will chant this first verse and finish. Om Shanno Mitra Sham Varunah Shanno Bhavatvaryama Shanna Indro Brihaspatihi Shanno Vishnurukramah Namo Brahmane Namaste Vayo Tvameva Pratyaksham Brahmasi Tvameva Pratyaksham Brahma Vadishyami Ritam Vadishyami Satyam Vadishyami Tanmamavatu Tadvaktaramavatu Avatu mamavatu vaktaram Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari.